Good evening and welcome back to Pjtn Facebook Live. I'm your host, Lori Cardoza-Moore, and I want to welcome you this Thursday evening as we gather together to talk about some of the issues of the day at Pjtn and update you in this format about what's happening with regards to anti-Semitism. For those of you who are not familiar with proclaiming justice to the nations, our mission is to educate Christians about their biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and defend the state of Israel against the rise of anti-Semitism. And unfortunately, for those of you who've been following Pjtn and following our Facebook Live, you are well aware that in 2017, the Anti-Defamation League released a report stating that anti-Semitism was on the rise as much as 86% in the United States. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is outrageous, especially because we are a Judeo-Christian nation. We have always had good relations with Israel since her inception. We've always had an important relationship with our Jewish communities across the country. And for those of you who've been following Pjtn, you know that we have been teaching Christians around the globe about our biblical responsibility to stand with Israel against the rise of anti-Semitism. We accomplish our mission by producing award-winning programs, documentaries, our Focus on Israel show, which is award-winning. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but these programs are produced with you in mind, to give you details, to give you the information so that you can share that information with your family and friends, especially from a biblical perspective, but also historical and archaeological and legal as well. So we hope that you'll tune in every, typically on Wednesday nights. We're doing it Thursday this week. I've had a very busy and hectic travel schedule. I'm in South Florida, enjoying the weather down here, but I'm going to be heading back up to the frozen Nashville area tomorrow just in time for snow and ice. So those of you in Tennessee, we're getting ready to brace for it. But I wanted to just talk about the Focus on Israel show just a little bit and let you all know that our show, and just as an aside, you can go to our website at pjtn.org, and if you go there, you can find our documentary films that we produced. Our Focus on Israel shows are available to you there. We have calendars of events. We have opportunities for you to get involved. There's so much information, updated articles about the issues that are important to the Pjtn Watchman and those of us here at Pjtn. So please make that opportunity available. Utilize that resource, having the website. Of course, we've got Facebook, we're on Twitter, Instagram. So we want to hear from you. And throughout this program, if you have a question about anything that we're talking about, please feel free to ask that question. That's what we're here for. I always find that when I engage with people, no matter where I am, speaking publicly or even in this forum, it helps to ask questions and have a discussion about the issues and how we can combat anti-Semitism in our communities. Like I said, with almost an 86% increase in anti-Semitism in the United States, it's just outrageous and it's unacceptable, especially because, as I said, we are a Judeo-Christian nation. But Focus on Israel show, our award-winning program, is broadcast through 19 different media partners with Pjtn. Every year we host an event at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, which will be coming up March 1st in Nashville, Tennessee. And so we hope that you'll consider joining us. It's an important opportunity to see some of the work that we've done over the coming year, what we're planning to do, and again, how you can get involved and support this holy work that we do here at Pjtn. But one of our newest media partners that have come online this past Sunday is Daystar, Daystar TV. And so if you've got DirecTV, if you've got Dish Network or even cable, you should be able to find Daystar. Daystar has over 1.6 billion viewers around the globe, and we just started airing our first Focus on Israel show this past Sunday, and you can catch it every Sunday evening. If you live on the East Coast, it's at midnight. Of course, Central Time is 11 p.m. And if you're out on the West Coast, you can catch Focus on Israel on Daystar at 9 p.m. So, and also, you know, we'd love to hear your feedback from the programs. Please send us a note, drop us an email, and tell us what your thoughts are. You know, it's interesting because as people watch these programs and our documentary films, people all over the world send us emails encouraging us in the work that we're doing, and with great gratitude for us dealing with these important topics, these important issues, especially for the Christian community. The other thing worth mentioning is at the NRB this year, our theme is going to be igniting the torch to the next generation. We have been producing programs for global distribution to educate Christians since 2007. And we have decided this year that it's time to start preparing our up-and-coming millennial generation, the Gen Xers, Gen Zers, and those who will come after them, about their role and how important it is that they engage in Christian communications, and also with regards to Israel, reporting and covering these topics and these issues from a historical biblical perspective, but from an accurate perspective as well. You know, you've heard us talk about the issue with replacement theology and supersessionism in our churches. We've talked about revisionism in revisionist history in our textbooks and also in the church. One of the things that we find is most people are not informed and not educated, either from the church, from a Christian perspective, or in our textbooks, because history is being rewritten, or information, important information about history is being left out, especially as it pertains to Israel, especially as it pertains to the Middle East conflict. We all are familiar, I'm sure, with the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which is an anti-Semitic movement against Israel. And of course, the accusations that the BDS supporters accuse Israel of being an apartheid state are all bunk. It's all lies. It's all, as President Trump would say, fake news. And so we are here to counter that information. Just as an aside, mentioning the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, the Prime Minister of Israel this week, it's reported that he is denying access to the anti-Semites who are pushing the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And I commend the Prime Minister of Israel for taking such a bold stand, for his willingness to, and his being so courageous to protect the citizens of Israel from these anti-Semites who only seek Israel's destruction. The head of the BDS movement, Omar Barghouti, who is an avowed anti-Semite, who talks about making Israel Judenrein, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And of course, he would desire to remove every Jew from the Holy Land of Israel. But we know from studying our Bible that God has given that land to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, and their descendants forever. It's so important that we as Christians understand that biblical perspective, because when God made that covenant with Abraham and his descendants, he said, he would make it forever, that the land, and you know, this is something so important, because he told Abraham, all the land that you see, I'm giving it to you and your descendants forever. Forever is forever, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't matter if it's, the 1900s or it's 2018. Forever means forever. And God is a God who fulfills his covenant. He's not a man that he should lie. And we as Christians had better hope that he is a covenant-keeping God, because he made a covenant with us to graft us into the Commonwealth of Israel, as the Apostle Paul mentioned. So, again, our goal is to, at NRB, to reach out to the young up-and-coming millennials. So if you are a millennial and you're watching this Facebook Live program and you're interested in attending the NRB, just as a little background about the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, it's one of the largest evangelical Christian broadcasters convention in the world. It's the most prestigious. Again, we have a conference every year, end of February, beginning of March. It happens to be in Nashville. Next year, it'll be in Anaheim. But this is where we showcase, again, all of the programs that we produce. We also make, I'm available to do TV and radio interviews, but we want to bring in these young minds, these young students. We're looking for interns, but we want to introduce them to the religious broadcasting world. And again, programming about Israel, pro-Israel programming from a biblical perspective, so that we can train and equip the next generation. You know, I was sharing with others about our biblical responsibility and teaching the Bible to our children and our children's children. In Joel chapter 1, verse 3, we are reminded that we are to teach the truth of the Torah, of the Bible, of the scriptures, the Septuagint, which are the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and the prophets. We are to teach all those things, even the New Testament, because the New Testament testifies to the promise that God made through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we are commanded by God to teach this to our children, to our children's children, throughout the generations. And so I tell parents and grandparents that just because you've raised your kids doesn't mean it's time to stop bringing this message and teaching our children about the Word of God and the covenant that God made with Israel, and that covenant is eternal. We still have a responsibility to teach that to our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. So nobody gets out. I wanted to also mention that tonight there's an interesting story that is breaking in Tennessee that I want to talk about, and I want to kind of build our conversation around this evening. And there was an incident that I was made aware of at Trevecca Nazarene University in Nashville, Tennessee. And just to give you a little background, a lot of the universities, many of you who are probably on tonight, know about what's happening on our college campuses. We know about the free speech that is being denied to the Jewish students and Christian students on college campuses. And typically, these college campuses that are denying free speech to individuals whose values or whose views don't fit with the mainstream or the left stream of the university campus or the professor or even the administration, their voice is blocked on the college campus. They're not allowed to come and speak. They're harassed if they do come and speak. There's a requirement for more security to protect them, and just that, including that security, requires a hefty price tag, and some price tags that some groups just cannot afford to meet. But unfortunately, this is going on more often than not, and there are states that are rising up and who are challenging this. We did here in Tennessee, there was a bill passed last year called the Campus Free Speech Protection Act, which protects the rights, the free speech of faculty members and students on college campuses from having their views or their values squashed by those who would oppose them, or threatened by those who would oppose them, like what we're seeing on campuses across the country. But there was an incident where a state senator, May Beavers, who I have to tell you, Senator Beavers has been a champion for our Judeo-Christian values. She has been outspoken on national security issues and also how those security issues affect us in the state of Tennessee. And of course, that's where Pjtn is headquartered. And the Senator Beavers was denied her free speech right to host a forum on Homeland Security because 3 of the individuals were accused of being Islamophobes by members of the Muslim community, which is really a shame. Again, this bill was just signed into law earlier in 2017 by Governor Haslam, and the university has stated that that the speakers did not reflect the values of the community, of the university, and its mission. So I want to just share with you some of the information that is in an article that I found today that was sent to me, and I found it interesting some of the people that were actually quoted in the article. But the article states that amid criticism, Trevecca Nazarene University has withdrawn a venue this month for the controversial event organized by a Republican gubernatorial candidate, May Beavers. Well, May Beavers, Senator Beavers actually is an alum of Trevecca Nazarene University. And this is really disturbing because this is typically, Trevecca is known in Tennessee as being a very conservative, evangelical, Bible-believing community, university campus. One would never expect something like this to take place on this campus. But Senator Beavers was planning a January 25th Homeland Security Summit with the 3 speakers, Bill French, who is well known on the research he has done on Islam and the Quran. He also, Kathy Henners, who is also a former New York State police officer, who's also dealt with terrorism. So she's very informed about these issues. And then John Guandolo. John came and testified in 2010 in Murfreesboro when Pjtn launched a campaign to expose the terrorists, the members of Hamas who served as board members on the board of the mosque in Murfreesboro when they were trying to build a 52,000 square feet facility. And it was actually John Guandolo's testimony in those hearings that helped Judge Corlew, who presided over the hearings, to agree with the plaintiffs in the lawsuit that the city or the city of Rutherford, or the city of Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, had not properly notified or noticed the citizens of Murfreesboro in informing them that this 52,000 square foot facility was going to be going in. And so John came to testify, and Judge Corlew, with all the evidence that was presented, his decision was affirmative that the plaintiffs were not properly noticed and they had a right to be concerned in their community. As of the 2 members who were connected to a terrorist group called Hamas, one of those members of the board of the Islamic Center in Murfreesboro actually was actively recruiting Muslims to kill Jews to free Palestine on his MySpace page. And of course, we still have a screenshot of that incident that happened. The interesting thing about that mosque is they wanted to build a 52,000 square foot facility for a community of only 25 people initially at that time, and they were moving from a 1,500 square foot facility. So these individuals that were coming to speak are all very well known in their field of expertise. They're very well respected. They have never, there's never been anything produced to suggest that any of them have misled or misinformed anyone with the information that they've provided throughout their careers. But going on, they quoted from Ibrahim Hooper, who is the communications director for the Council on American Islamic Relations. And for those of you who've been involved with Pjtn, you know how I feel about CARE. The Council on American Islamic Relations, just to remind our audience, was listed as an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorist fundraising operation in the history of the United States of America. And that happened, you all may remember, in Carrollton, Texas. And of course, they were listed as an unindicted co-conspirator because the government ran out of funding to continue pursuing them. And that was unfortunate because the government never runs out of funding for anything, but somehow they ran out of too much money and they couldn't nail CARE to the wall, and they should have. Ibrahim Hooper made the statement that this is his quote, "It's kind of a who's who of Islamophobes." And he's speaking with regards to the three individuals that I just mentioned who were going to be panelists speaking at Trevecca Nazarene College. These people have never misled. They've never been, anything that they've written or anything that they've spoken publicly has never been challenged as being false. And so we respect them and their perspective and the information that they've provided for us. But for Ibrahim to use that statement that they're a bunch of Islamophobes is outrageous. Number one, because who is Ibrahim Hooper but a supporter and a communicator for a terrorist front group, the Council on American Islamic Relations. Many of you have heard me talk about how CARE, not only listed as an unindicted co-conspirator, but has also influenced the education of our children. CARE has published materials, instructional materials for our children in their textbooks, 7th grade specifically here in Tennessee, but it's not just Tennessee. If you've been following us at Pjtn, you know that this is a nationwide problem, that there are parents and citizens who are finding this type of content in their children's textbooks across the country. So for a man who is tied to a terrorist front group, who helped raise money to fund terrorism in the Middle East, this man is a man who shouldn't be quoted. And it's my understanding that he's one of the groups or one of the individuals that called for this event to be canceled. He goes on to say the themes are always the same. Muslims are about to take over the country and install Sharia in place of the Constitution, and mosques are hotbeds of extremism. Well, we know very well in Tennessee about hotbeds of extremism from mosques in Tennessee. And I can remind you all, and you all can research this, Carlos Bledsoe, who was from Memphis, Tennessee, you all may remember in 2009, Carlos murdered a recruiting officer in Arkansas. And of course, before he went to Arkansas, he came to Nashville, where he had firebombed one of our local rabbis' homes before he went to Arkansas. He was recruited by these terrorist groups that are operating on the college campus at TSU. His father testified to that. In fact, his father has testified in many, many hearings. You could find that on the internet as well. There's YouTube videos of his father's testimony about the influence of TSU on his son, converting his son to Islam, as well as the Islamic Center in Nashville, Tennessee. So we have had a problem with terrorist activity. We also don't have to, it wasn't that long ago that we had another Muslim terrorist who grew up in Tennessee who killed 5 recruiting officers in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So for Ibrahim to belittle Senator Beavers and her attempt to educate not just the citizens of the community, but also the students on that campus about this growing threat with these voices who are respected, have been well respected, again. And so for Ibrahim to belittle these individuals because of his own bias and his own disinformation campaign, he shouldn't be considered. He shouldn't even be quoted in this Tennessean article. But the article goes on to state that Beavers released a statement on Wednesday describing Trevecca's decision as, quote, caving to Islamic pressure. and said the university had, quote, abandoned biblical principles in order to embrace political correctness and promote the interests of those who deny Christ. Well, I commend Senator Beavers for taking a bold stand, for calling Trevecca out on what they're doing. If you are a parent who is considering sending your child to Trevecca University, Nazarene University, I would encourage you to think twice. If this university is not willing to stand up for truth, when there is documented evidence, even in the state of Tennessee, of terrorist activity in the city, the 12th Avenue Mosque in Nashville, Tennessee, right after 9/11, the day after 9/11, a protege of the one-eyed sheikh who was behind the first World Trade Center bombing was the imam in that mosque, and he was removed from the city. I don't know where that man is now, but there has been a hotbed of activity that has gone on. We've seen it on the college campuses, where the Students for Justice in Palestine, another group who tries to shout down and suppress people's free speech rights about terrorism. And unfortunately, when somebody like Senator Beavers and these individuals come to speak about this topic to inform citizens, they're shut down because of political correctness. And yes, it's even infiltrated the church. We've talked about revisionist history going on, and now we're afraid and we're intimidated because somebody might complain or make a stink about it. But the article goes on to say that in the statement in USA Today by the university, they stated that the reason why they canceled the event was because it would distract from Trevecca's mission. I would love to ask the administration at Trevecca, what is their mission? Because obviously it is no longer to bring truth, to allow a marketplace of differing ideas, the facts, the truth to come out. That is shameful, especially coming from a Christian university. The article goes on to state that, quote, throughout history, Trevecca has consistently offered political candidates of both parties the opportunity to use our campus for events. This is not a political event. This was a state senator who, yes, is running for governor, but this was not a governor's race fundraising event or political event. This was an informative event for the community to talk about a topic that is critically important for the future of this republic. And yes, there are groups who would like to, and these groups, Islamic groups, have publicly said their goal is to implement Sharia law. We've seen it happen in Irving, Texas. The mayor of Irving, Texas can tell you that she is constantly being approached and constantly being berated about having Sharia courts alongside her courts in her district, in her city. So this is not an unfamiliar conversation. Furthermore, the article goes on to say, however, recent event tentatively scheduled to be held on our campus appears to have an agenda beyond a political campaign. Again, this was not a political event. Correct me if I'm wrong. Senator Beavers was holding a public forum to inform the community and the citizens on the campus. And Trevecca President Dan Boone said in a statement on Tuesday, the university shared concerns expressed by the alumni who had contacted the school after learning of the event. So as I said, Senator Beavers is an alum of the university. She graduated from that school, and unfortunately that school has completely changed. But in response to CARE's initial criticism of the events and the event speakers, Senator Beavers noted that the Muslim advocacy group had been designated a terrorist group by the United Arab Emirates, and that's something you all should know. UAE recognized CARE as a terrorist group. And of course, as I said earlier, they were also listed by our government as an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorist fundraising operation in the history of the United States. So we should all listen to Ibrahim Hooper because he's an expert. It goes on to say Guandalo, a former FBI agent who runs the website and training group Understanding the Threat, was accused by a Minnesota sheriff last year of assaulting him at a national law enforcement conference. Well, we will have to see if that is fake news or if it's accurate. Knowing John Guandalo, it's fake news. More of it. The article goes on to say, although Trevecca said it was attempting to have Beavers move the event to another venue, it does state that an Eventbrite page selling $40 for tickets for the summit still lists Trevecca's Boone building as the location. So anyhow, again, this is happening all over the country. People with differing views, especially when it comes to terrorism, terrorists, Islamic terrorists, are silenced and shut down and called Islamophobes because we're speaking the truth. We're only quoting what they say and what they've written. And so it's so important, ladies and gentlemen, that those of you who are with us today, I encourage you to contact Trevecca University, Nazarene University in Nashville, and let them know your thoughts. It is outrageous, again, that a Christian university is denying the free speech of these individuals to share with a community that has a vested interest in knowing what's going on in our community, in our state. I just want to also reiterate, as I stated earlier, about Carlos Bledsoe. Senator Beavers has had hearings in the state legislature on this topic. This is not new territory for her. She's been leading, as I said earlier, she's been leading the charge in exposing the terrorist activity in the state of Tennessee, and how that is, how we're witnessing similar incidents and activity in other states across the United States of America. We also know, as I mentioned earlier, two of the board members of the mosque in Murfreesboro had ties to Hamas. As I said, one was actively recruiting Muslims to kill Jews to free Palestine on his MySpace page. We also know, we talked about the Islamic terrorists who killed the 5 recruiting officers in Chattanooga. And also earlier this year, there was an imam in Memphis, Tennessee, who called for killing the Jews last summer because the Israeli police put up metal detectors on the Temple Mount. You all may recall that there was a shooting on the Temple Mount, and after that shooting, the Israeli police put in metal detectors. Well, there was such an outcry from the Islamic community around the world that those metal detectors were preventing the Muslims from going up to pray on the Temple Mount. And that is as outrageous as it can possibly be. When we travel, when we go through airports, we all go through scanners, we go through metal detectors. When we go into government buildings, we have to go through metal detectors. But this imam in Memphis thought that that justified him encouraging his congregants to kill Jews because of that, because they accused the Jews or Israel of trying to take over the Temple Mount and deny them the ability to go up to pray. So anyhow, so that's what we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. And we are 34 minutes past the hour, and I want to just open up to some questions and see who we've got. Please feel free, if you have any questions or thoughts or comments that you would like me to share, please tune in and do so. I have a question here about the new programming on Daystar. When does it air? I want to thank you for asking. As I mentioned earlier, our Focus on Israel show, which is an award-winning program, it's broadcast all over the world. on different affiliates. We call them Pjtn media partners, but we just started broadcasting on Daystar, and you can look up on your local listings what channel Daystar is. The program Focus on Israel show will be broadcasting on Sunday nights each week. So I encourage you to tune in. Again, it's midnight on the East Coast. It's 11 p.m. Central Time, and then 9 p.m. on the West Coast, Pacific Time. And if you're not home and you can't watch, or if you've gone to bed, set your DVR and watch it. The information that you're going to find in these programs is outstanding. You're going to love the people that we interview. We deal with all different types of topics on as it relates to Israel, and of course the rise of anti-Semitism and how you can get engaged and get involved in your community. So thank you, Jackie, for asking that question. Also, I have another question. Do you have plans to go to Israel? And will Pjtn ever host a tour we can sign up for? Well, I will be going to Israel March 15th through the 30th this coming year. I'll be over there attending the Global Forum on Anti-Semitism by the Israeli government. I look forward to attending every 2 years. They host this in Israel. We'll be over there filming, doing interviews, talking with experts about all of these issues and more. So with regards to hosting a trip to Israel, I hope that we, God willing, will, if we get a response from our audience. And if you're interested in attending, we could very easily put one together in November of this year. This would be a great year to be able to do it. And another question we have, is there a book you can recommend on anti-Semitism, and how can we, let me see, how can we combat? Well, that is a great question. And what I would recommend to you, there's several books out there that are great on to address the issue of anti-Semitism, but I'm going to turn you back to a documentary that we produced back in 2009 called The Forgotten People, Christianity and the Holocaust. And that documentary film, which won awards, it was nominated for an Emmy. That documentary goes into the history of Christian anti-Semitism. It addresses the issue of replacement theology and supersessionism, and how that has fueled anti-Semitism historically between the Christian church and the Jewish community. It's important to remember, you know, when we were producing that documentary, one of the things I found so interesting about and really grievous to me was that Germany was a Judeo-Christian nation. And Germany was also educated. People would send their children to universities in Germany from around the world. And it was also a wealthy nation. And so you have to ask yourself, but it was a Christian nation. It was there were Jews who lived in Germany. There were Catholics. There were Protestants. We know that the Reformation movement came out of Germany. So you have to ask yourself the question, how could anti-Semitism become the norm, and the murder of 6 million Jews be tolerated by a country with so many Christians? And unfortunately, the answer to that is because of the history of replacement theology, the history of supersessionism. Even Hitler, we look at Martin Luther and his writings. Martin Luther, who many Protestants revere as one of the great church fathers of history, he was an avowed anti-Semite at the end of his life. He wrote a book called The Jews and Their Lies. And Hitler used Martin Luther's writings to justify murdering 6 million Jews. So you have to ask yourself, can anti-Semitism happen in the United States of America? Is it possible? Well, let's look at the similarities. You have, like Germany, an educated Judeo-Christian nation. You have a wealthy nation. And this is the nation that really sends the gospel out to the four corners of the earth. Can it happen again? Yes, it absolutely can. And of course, when we opened up this program, we talked about the 86% increase in anti-Semitic incidents here in the United States in 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, that is outrageous, and it should not be tolerated. God told the prophet Joel in the latter days he was going to wipe out the nations of the world because they were dividing up his land. He also told the prophet Obadiah that in the latter days he would wipe out the descendants of Edom because they stood by while their brother Jacob was held in captivity and they did nothing. Sounds like the church. The church stood by during the pogroms. They stood by during the Inquisition. They stood by during the Holocaust. And unfortunately, by and large, the church is standing by again. So that's why we're here. That's why we've made these educational materials available to you, not just for you alone, but for you to share with your family, to share with your friends, and get engaged in what's going on in your community. We have another question. How can I become a new Pjtn Watchman? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we have launched a campaign. We are, our goal this year is to sign up 5,000 new Pjtn Watchmen. And for just $20 a month, you'll have access to our programs. Tell us what you think about what you've learned, and tell us the reaction as you share the information with your family and friends. Tell us what they're saying and what they're hearing. So again, please visit our website at pjtn.org. Remember, like us on Facebook, and also don't forget we're on Twitter, Instagram as well. Another question: do you have plans? We are, as I said earlier, we do have plans to go to Israel this year, and if we can hear from enough Pjtn Watchmen, we really need at least 50 people to put a tour together. So if you are interested, please email us or send us a Facebook message that you would be interested in learning more about a trip to Israel with Pjtn. We'd love to take you and plan an exciting tour to show you the historical, archaeological, legal, and biblical rights that Israel has to her ancient homeland. Another question, how can we have a film showing in our organization and have you come as a speaker? Well, I would love, and I'd love to come and speak to your community. If you will just email us at info@pjtn.org. Again, go to pjtn.org, and there's links there. Send us a message. Let us know where you live and what your thoughts are. We would love to come and screen one of our documentaries, or of course I would be happy to come and speak to your community as well. We have a question about the embassy. So is the embassy moved to Jerusalem foretold in the Old Testament? Well, it's there are numerous scriptures that talk about Jerusalem, that there are going to be nations that God will bring into the valley of Jehoshaphat, or the valley of judgment, and he will go into judgment with these nations because they are trying to move Jerusalem. Or the one scripture that I'm thinking about is that Jerusalem will become a stone, a burdensome stone, and that anybody who tries to move her will be cut by it. So Jerusalem is it is the capital of the state of Israel. It has been for thousands of years. We know that King David set up his kingdom right after he was in Hebron, in Jerusalem. He ruled a united 12 tribes, a united kingdom, Israel, from Jerusalem. Solomon ruled from Jerusalem. His son Rehoboam ruled from Jerusalem. So there are 670, over 600, almost 670 times that Jerusalem is mentioned in the Bible. Jerusalem is not mentioned in any other holy text, not the Quran. It's only mentioned in the Bible. And so there are even Muslim groups who have said that Jerusalem is the holy city to the Jewish people. So anyhow, so if there's any more questions, I'd love to take some and hear your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the program. Let me see who we have here. Prayer. Yep, I think we've got all our questions for the evening. So again, just to wrap up the program, it's 6:46. And I want to thank you all again for joining us tonight. And I look forward to being with you again next Wednesday night at the same time, 6 p.m. Central Time. Please feel free to email me any questions or send a Facebook message. Let us know your thoughts. And again, we love hearing from you. And again, visit the website, sign up to get on our mailing list. And of course, order our documentaries, our television programs. Tune in to Daystar on Sunday night or set your DVR. But we're delighted to have you as a member of our team, as a member of our family. And we want to be your resource to help you to share this information with your children, your children's children, and their children throughout all the generations as God commands us. So God bless you so much for joining us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And thanks again for tuning in to Pjtn Facebook Live. I'm Laurie Cardoza Moore. Thank you.